What is this week's video going to be about?
I know. Let's make it a special effects project.
Let's go film a time lapse.
Alright, this time lapse is gonna be epic. I'm gonna shoot some footage from the car. I'm gonna go to that pedestrian bridge. I can't wait, but hold on. It's pretty cold. I think I need a jacket. Yeah, that's better. Alright, let's go make a movie. Did I forget anything? Nope, I'm good. Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to another intro to video production lesson. As you saw from my little intro video there, Adventures in Time Lapse, this week is all about making a special effects project. So you're going to learn 4 different special effects techniques. All of those were in my video. So you're going to have some slow motion, just like when I got up from the chair. You're going to use time lapse, reverse, and vanish and appear. So just like how I had my sweatshirt pop on in that video. So those are 4 basic techniques that you don't need a lot of fancy video editing software. If we were in class, I'd probably be showing you how to use some green screen effects and add different layers. But since we're all using different types of software, I want to keep it really basic. But I think you're going to be able to do all of these different effects just with a cell phone or a GoPro or a DSLR if you have it. So you could even film all of this with your Chromebook's webcam. You would just have to speed up the footage significantly when you do the time lapse. Okay, after you're finished making your video, you're going to put it in your Google Drive folder that's shared with me, and then also attach that video to the assignment in Google Classroom. So these videos aren't for Heron TV. They're just fun special effects videos. We may feature some, especially if we get some really cool creative examples. But this is really just for you to learn how to have some fun with some special effects. So before we get started, we have a Heron TV planning meeting this Wednesday at 11:30. So that is December 9th. The office hours link in Google Classroom is where you're going to go if you choose to join, because I have students from all 4 of my classes are going to be joining us to figure out who wants to get involved hosting, running different segments, whatever you'd like to do for the show. This is a meeting where we can plan things out for the next couple months to get you guys involved as much as possible. So come join us if that's something that sounds like fun for you. Okay, so the first of the 4 effects that we're going to cover is time lapse. So here's a time lapse video that I made a few years ago just while driving home from spring break. So when you're filming time lapse footage, look for objects that appear to have a great change over time. So cars, clouds, waves, etc. can all look interesting in a time lapse. Just have patience, because usually a time lapse is just 1 or 2 frames per second, and then when you play that back at real time, it's 25 times fast, 50 times fast, something like that. And so if you record out of a car window for a minute, plan on that only making a few seconds of footage. So each time that every clip here is about a minute of me holding my camera very steady so I can film. And the more you can see in a shot, the better. If you film out of the side window, you don't always get the same effect that you would if you go out the front window of the car, where you can see more things happening and give it time to unfold. So time-lapse can be a lot of fun. I know a lot of phones have that as an option. In my example, I shot it with both my phone and with a GoPro. I even have time-lapse on my DSLRs that I use. But since I was filming myself, how to use those, and we'll cut to that just a second so you can learn all about how to do time lapse. Woo! I am glad I brought my jacket. So here I am on top of a pedestrian bridge in Oregon City right by Willamette Falls. And what I'm doing is recording a time lapse with a GoPro. So what I did is I just set it up and I'm just leaving it so I can get footage for a long time. Now, cars look great in a time lapse because there's gonna see a lot of change over time. So I'm just gonna let that go for 5-10 minutes and I'll see what I come up with. I'm also doing the same thing with my phone. So if you don't have a GoPro, iPhones, and I imagine Android phones do too, have a time-lapse feature. So let me show you what that looks like. So here I just have my cell phone propped up on my cell phone tripod, but it would work from a coffee cup tripod along the side of the road, whatever you want to do for that. And I'm just going to record the footage of the highway. You can see the cars are going by really slowly, but then when it plays back in fast motion, it looks great. And then I added a little bit of panning and zooming to give it a little bit more interest. So that's how you record a time lapse. Okay, so in addition to time lapse, we also have slow motion. And slow motion is really important that you adjust your frame rate before you just slow something down. Because normal video has a frame rate of 24 to 30 frames per second. So this example here of me on a skateboard was filmed at 120 frames per second, just filmed using my iPhone, and then it automatically slows it down. So you're still getting a normal frame rate, but it looks like it's in slow motion. So if you were to just slow this down from a normal footage, it would look really choppy. But because there are additional frames as you slow it down, it looks pretty good. So let me explain how different frame rates affect your slow motion with this example of me juggling some golf balls. Okay, so when you're recording in slow motion, you gotta think about your frame rate. Right now, this camera that I'm using is recording at 24 frames per second. In normal speed, that motion looks fine. In fact, 24 frames per second gives you the most natural look that the human eye sees. So in real time, it might look like this. However, if I want to slow that down and I'm filming at 24 frames per second, if I make this half speed, it's only 12 frames per second. Let's see how that looks. So when you want to slow things down, you have to go to a higher frame rate. On my DSLR, I can go as high as 60 frames per second, and let me show you what that looks like. I'm now going to be filming at 60 frames per second. So if you look at this in real time, it doesn't have a normal amount of motion blur. It's almost too crisp. But if I'm planning on slowing this down to 50%, let's see how that looks. So 60 frames per second at half speed is really 30 frames per second, which looks very similar to 24, and it's a very natural look. If I want to go any slower than 60 frames per second and want to slow things into maybe 25% or even slower than that, I need to go up to a frame rate such as 120 or 240 frames per second. Now, I can't do that on my DSLR. That's a very expensive feature. However, you can do that on a cell phone. So on my iPhone, I'm going to shoot at both 120 frames per second and at 240 frames per second. And I want you to notice the difference for how each shot looks. This first example you're going to see in slow motion is done at 120 frames per second. So if I want to slow that down significantly, it'll still look great. Now let's take a look at what it's going to look at 240 frames per second. When I want to switch to 240 frames per second on my iPhone 11, I have to use the rear-facing camera. So hopefully it's framed up okay. So those are your 4 different frame rates that you can try filming in. Depending on what camera you have, it's going to be a little bit different. So test that out and see how you can use slow motion in your special effects project. All right, the vanish and appear effect. You've probably seen me do this in lots of videos. If I ever want to change locations from one place to another, I might snap my fingers or add some different effects. Sometimes I jump and spin. But real basically, to pull off this effect, what you need to do is film an actor or a subject somewhere, and then remove them and keep filming the scene. So in this video here, I'm sitting on the couch, and then I'm going to walk away from the shot, but I'm going to continue filming the couch. Then what I do is I cut to myself just appearing, and magically, it just looks like I've just shown up. It helps to sell the effect by jumping into a shot or snapping or doing something like that. You can add some sound effects to it too, but the VanishAppear is a really fun way to pull off these sorts of shots. Just make sure to keep your camera super, super still. So watch this tutorial and see how you can vanish and appear in your video. So for this one, it's really easy. All you have to do is keep your camera very, very steady. So make sure to use some sort of stabilization device, maybe that coffee cup tripod you used, but it's got to be perfectly still for this effect to work. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to film this couch without me on it, and then I'm going to appear. Now, when I appear, I'm going to act like I just showed up, okay? So let me demonstrate. And then if I want to vanish, all I have to do is just go away. But usually adding some sort of effect works nicely. So maybe I'll snap. When I go to edit that, I have just appeared. Now you can do all sorts of things like that. You could... This can work with all sorts of things. So you could just have like a hat appear or something. You just need to make sure you're perfectly still. So all of a sudden be in one motion. All right. Scooter, you made it! Hi, buddy! So, or you can do a close change. Let's see if he stays perfectly still. Now, and if anything in the background changes, the shot's going to look weird. See how you can just magically edit all those in? It's all just by having a cut with making sure everything else in the background has changed, even your lighting. So when I go to edit this, this might look a little weird. And see, now that the dog's moving, I can't use this part of the shot if I wanted to cut anything away. But now that he's still, and that is how you do the vanish and appear. All right, we also have, I think our final effect that we're going to look at is reverse. So reverse is real simple. You just film something, but then flip it around in the editing software. So whether that's Clipchamp or iMovie, you can generally click reverse fairly easily. You can try and find that in there. And then just put your clip in reverse. This clip looks great in reverse. This is a student a couple years ago jumping over another student. And then when we put it in reverse, it kind of has this magical effect. So whatever you want to end up filming, and yeah, here's a footage of me frying an egg this morning in reverse. It looks kind of neat when you see a big change. And there's some awesome examples that I'm going to show you that I found on YouTube as well. So by using all these different effects, reverse, slow motion, time lapse, and the vanish effect, you can really make things look pretty neat in a video. All right, so here's some examples. This is a video that I found online and just has all sorts of cool things that just look great in reverse. So, you know, he's got a can here, and when he crushes it, it looks great. This is you'll see, is a water balloon being popped. Looks pretty cool as that comes back in reverse. So there are all sorts of things. You can watch that to get some ideas. Here's a video that I made. Let me jump ahead. This was from last spring. But you can see filming clouds when they're moving by fairly quickly looks amazing when you put it in time lapse, and you can play around with the speed. So clouds can be a cool option also. This video explains time lapse in great detail if you want to take a look at that. So all of that is available on the YouTube channel, but also right here in the slides as well. So take a look at any of these resources to help you with that. Here is a tutorial video that I watched in order to learn that crash through effect that I used a couple weeks ago when I crashed through the computer screen into the studio. So I highly recommend checking out this effect. Now, this is all explained and how do you do the effect in Final Cut, but really there's nothing too fancy about this effect. You should still be able to do something similar to it just with Clipchamp or iMovie. So if you want to try that, I highly recommend taking a look at it. This guy's got some really neat special effects videos, so go check out his channel. Hey everybody, the secret word this week is sunrise, because if you get up early enough, you can capture some really cool pictures. So enjoy the time-lapse video at the end, and remember, your secret word is sunrise. So there it is, sun's coming up. Sunrise, that's the secret word. Okay, some other great things you can do to your video is add some music. So bensound.com, I'll show you that, is a great place to find music, and so is the YouTube Creator Studio. Let me show you what bensound looks like. All you have to do is go and to bensound.com. There are all sorts of songs. You could test them out by playing them. All right, if you're looking for a really dramatic song, in fact, that was a song that was used in a video that I showed, I think, last week to you guys, so maybe you recognize that song. But at any rate, if you find something you like, you click download, and then it is free with license attribution. That means that when you post this video anywhere, you have to share the link. You can just share the link with me, or just put that in the titles of your video that says music from Ben Sounds, because we want to give credit for this free stuff. They also have music that you can pay for, but I imagine no one wants to buy any music for a project. So there you go. You have this the song downloaded to your downloads, and then you can just add it into your video editing software. So that's a really cool option. There are some other cool places to find music. Purple Planet has music. The Free Music Archive has stuff you can use. And Sound Bible's great if you're just looking for sound effects. Also, speaking of sound effects, there's this great video here called The Magic of Making Sound. I highly recommend checking it out. It is a mini documentary about Foley artists. Those are sound engineers that record sound effects to go along with video. Because a lot of times when we film something, the sound doesn't get captured in a way that is really compelling for telling a story. So by recreating sounds that match that is what's done in almost all professional productions. And it's really neat to see some of the different objects they use to create the effects. It's pretty magical, just like our special effects are. So there you go. All right, and just a quick review. Last week we learned those 3 in-camera transitions. Go ahead and try them again if you want to. You don't have to, but that's why I showed you these transitions, because they can work well in all sorts of projects, not just jokes of the day. So maybe try a walk into the frame, a cover reveal, or a whip pan. Any of those. If you find other transitions too, that would be great. We could have a little transition challenge to show off to each other. So cool. All right, so just in quick review, we learned our 4 special effects, right? Slow motion, time lapse, reverse, and VanishAppear. Make sure you put all of those into a project. Try adding some music to it, some sound effects. Put that into your Google Drive folder. Also attach it to the assignment right here in Google Classroom so that I'm able to take a look at your video. Like I said, these aren't for Heron TV, but if we have some really awesome examples, I may want to show them. I'll let you know if I'm going to use your example first or want to see if I can get permission to do that. So don't forget, Wednesday we've got that Heron TV planning meeting. I'd love to see you there. So if that's something you're interested in, come on and join us. So I'm going to head back to Willamette Falls and wrap this video up. Okay, so I'm at one of my favorite locations. It's called Willamette Falls. And this is actually the 2nd largest waterfall by volume in the entire United States. It's kind of sad that they put a dam here, but luckily this has all been given back to the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. And they're going to be developing this area with a cultural center. So someday you may be able to get down much closer to the falls and explore and learn about the history of this area. So a really cool place to film a time lapse. Really, I just came to film the cars because I think cars look great in a time lapse. So there you have it, guys. Willamette Falls, lovely place to shoot pictures. It's just really cold today, so never stop creating, and I'll see you in the next video.